I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the pot of coffee I just brewed, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Marissa, my wife, or at least she still was, legally speaking. The text popped up, and I swear it felt like someone dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. Hey, just a heads up. Mom's hosting a small thing for Eli's birthday Saturday. We kept it tight, just family. Hope you understand. I read it once, then twice, because my brain couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Just family? Eli's my son. My little boy, the one I'd rocked to sleep 100 times, the one whose diapers I'd changed in the middle of the night while Marissa snored away. His first birthday, and I'm not invited? My chest tightened, like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed it hard. I blinked at the screen, trying to make sense of it, but all I could feel was this sharp sting, this betrayal cutting deeper with every second I stood there. I couldn't just let it sit there, festering like that. My hands were shaking, but I hit the call button anyway. Marissa picked up after 2 rings, her voice all light and airy, like she was talking about the weather. It's just a birthday, Cal. Don't make it a thing. Don't make it a thing? My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. This wasn't some random barbecue or a girl's night out. It was Eli's first birthday, a milestone I'd been picturing for months. I'd stayed up late imagining the cake, the goofy grin he'd have when we sang to him, the way I'd scoop him up and tell him he was the best thing I'd ever made. And now she was acting like it was nothing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be there. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out rough, raw. He's my son too, Marissa. How is this not a thing? She sighed, that little huff she does when she's annoyed, and said, look, it's Mom's thing. She wanted it small. You'll see him another day. Another day. Like I was some weekend visitor, not his dad. I hung up, my pulse hammering in my ears, and before I could stop myself, I dialed Doreen, Marissa's mom. She answered with that fake sweet tone she uses when she's about to shut you down. Callum, hi. What's this about? I didn't waste time. Why am I not invited to Eli's birthday? She didn't even pause, just launched right in. It's more of a maternal side event, nothing personal. We're keeping it simple. Nothing personal? I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat like a jagged rock. Eli's my kid, and they're boxing me out like I'm some distant cousin who sends a card once a year. I wanted to yell, to tell her how wrong this was, but she kept going, her voice sharp now. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Callum. It's one day. One day. My son's first birthday. I hung up on her too, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I walked into the living room, still reeling, and there it was, a half-finished Lego tower Eli had been playing with the last time he was here. Those little blue and red bricks, scattered across the coffee table, hit me like a punch to the gut. I could still see his chubby hands stacking them, hear his giggle when they'd fall over. That was my boy, my life, and they were cutting me out of it. Something snapped inside me, this hot, angry thing that I couldn't push down anymore. Fine. If they didn't want me there, if I wasn't family enough for them, then I wouldn't be around at all. I grabbed my phone again, my thumb hovering over the screen, and I started looking for a way out. Not just out of the house, but out of this whole mess they'd made. They could have their maternal side of it. Without me, I'd be gone, and they'd see what it felt like to miss someone who mattered. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't sticking around to beg for a seat at a table they didn't even set for me. My heart was still racing, but now it wasn't just hurt, it was purpose. I'd show them I didn't need their permission to live my life, to feel like I mattered. Eli might not remember this birthday, but I damn sure remember how they made me feel, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. I sat down on the couch, right next to that Lego tower, and started scrolling, looking for somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't here. They'd pushed me out, and I was done pushing back. It was time to walk away. The kitchen felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in, but I didn't care. I poured myself a coffee, the steam rising up as I leaned against the counter, my mind spinning. I wasn't just mad, I was done. Done with Marissa's breezy excuses, done with Doreen's smug little rules, done with feeling like I had to prove I belonged in my own son's life. I took a sip, the heat burning my tongue, and it felt good, like it was waking me up. I wasn't going to call again, wasn't going to argue. They'd made their choice, and now I was making mine. I'd find a place to go, somewhere far from their balloons and their cake and their just family nonsense. I didn't need their invitation, I'd make my own plans, my own peace. And maybe, just maybe, they'd realize what they'd lost when I wasn't there to pick up the pieces anymore. I set the mug down, harder than I meant to, and it clinked against the counter. My eyes drifted back to the phone, to that stupid text still glowing on the screen. Hope you understand. No, I didn't understand, and I wasn't going to pretend I did. I opened a browser, my fingers moving fast now, searching for flights, hotels, anything that'd take me away from this. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't spending Saturday sitting here, staring at these walls, while they celebrated without me. They wanted a tight little party? They could have it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't reach me, and I'd make damn sure it was better than anything they could have planned. That Lego tower caught my eye again, and I felt a pang, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about Eli, this was about them, and I wasn't playing their game anymore. I couldn't sleep that night, not after the way everything had gone down in the kitchen earlier. The house was quiet, too quiet, and it gave my thoughts too much room to bounce around. I ended up on the couch, a beer in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through an old photo album I'd kept on there. Pictures of Eli popped up, tiny, wrinkled, fresh from the hospital, his little fist curled up while Marissa slept in the background. I'd taken those shots, bleary-eyed and grinning like an idiot, because I couldn't believe he was mine. There were others too, me reading him bedtime stories, his head tucked under my chin, or the two of us at the park, him laughing as I pushed him on the baby swings. Those moments were everything to me, the glue that kept me going through the late nights and the fights with Marissa. And now, his first birthday was coming, this big, bright milestone, and they were telling me I wasn't essential. Like I was some extra piece they could leave out of the puzzle. The beer tasted bitter, or maybe that was just me. I set it down and rubbed my face, trying to shake the weight pressing on my chest. I kept seeing the text from Marissa, those cold little words, just family, and Doreen's voice, smooth and sharp, calling it a maternal side of it. It wasn't just that they didn't invite me, it was that they didn't even think I'd care. Like all those nights I'd spent pacing the floor with Eli, all those mornings I'd made his bottles, didn't count for anything. I wasn't going to sit here and take it, though. I wasn't going to let them erase me from his life one small thing at a time. My hand was trembling, but I grabbed my phone again, this time with a purpose. I wasn't calling anyone, I was done talking. I opened a travel app instead, the screen lighting up my face in the dark living room. At first, I scrolled through beach resorts, picturing sand and sun and a drink with one of those little umbrellas. But that didn't feel right, too loud, too crowded. I needed something else, something that'd strip away all this noise in my head. Then I saw it, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Snow, mountains, cabins tucked away where no one could find me. It hit me like a lightning bolt. This was it. I could see myself there, standing in the cold, breathing air that didn't smell like resentment. I tapped through the options fast, my heart pounding now, but not from anger anymore. A private cabin, a ski pass, a first-class flight out of here. It was all right there, waiting. I didn't care about the cost. I just wanted out. I booked it all in one go, my fingers slamming the confirm button like it was a lifeline. The next morning, I woke up with a crick in my neck from the couch, but I didn't care. The sun was barely up, and I felt different, like I'd taken a step I couldn't take back. I grabbed my phone and called Jude, my boss, before I could second-guess myself. He picked up quick, his voice gravelly like he'd just rolled out of bed too. Cal, what's up? You okay? I didn't sugarcoat it. I need some time off, Jude. Starting tomorrow. I'm heading out of town. There was a pause, and I braced myself for questions, but he just chuckled, low and easy. You deserve some space, man. Take it. We'll manage without you for a bit. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Thanks, Jude. I owe you. He laughed again. Nah, you don't. Just don't freeze your ass off wherever you're going. I hung up, and for the first time in days, I felt lighter. The house didn't feel so small anymore. It felt like a launch pad. I got up, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to make coffee, my mind already racing with what I'd need to pack. Wyoming wasn't just a getaway, it was a statement. They could have their party, their balloons, their cake. I didn't need it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't touch me, and I'd make it better than anything they could throw together. I poured the coffee, the smell filling the room, and leaned against the counter, staring out the window. The backyard was still, just grass and a couple of trees, but in my head, I was already seeing snow-covered hills and pine trees stretching up to the sky. I took a sip, letting the heat sink in, and started planning. I'd need my heavy coat, some boots, maybe a hat, stuff I hadn't touched since last winter. I'd pack light, though. I didn't want anything weighing me down. This wasn't about running away, it was about taking control. They thought I'd just sit here, waiting for scraps of time with Eli, but they were wrong. I wasn't going to beg for a place in his life. I'd build something for myself instead. The coffee mug warmed my hands, and I felt a small, hard smile tug at my mouth. Jackson Hole wasn't just a trip. It was my way of saying I wasn't disposable. They could keep their tight, little party. I'd be gone, and they'd feel it. I set the mug down and headed to the bedroom, pulling my duffel bag out from under the bed. It was old, a little beat up, but it'd do. I tossed it on the mattress and started grabbing clothes, sweaters, socks, a pair of gloves I'd forgotten I owned. Every item I threw in felt like a brick in a wall I was building between me and them. I didn't know what I'd find out there in the snow, but I knew it'd be better than sitting here, staring at that half-finished Lego tower and feeling like I didn't matter. I zipped the bag shut, the sound loud in the quiet room, and stood there for a second, breathing hard. This was it. I was really doing it. And for once, I wasn't looking back. I stood in the bedroom, my duffel bag zipped up and sitting on the bed like a quiet promise. Packing it had been slow, deliberate. Every sweater I folded, every pair of socks I tucked in, felt like I was putting on armor. Not the kind that protects you from a fight, but the kind that keeps you standing when someone's already knocked you down. The house was still, just the hum of the fridge in the kitchen breaking the silence, and I liked it that way. It gave me space to think, to let the decision I'd made last night settle into my bones. I was leaving. Jackson Hole was waiting, and I wasn't going to let anything pull me back. Not guilt, not second thoughts, nothing. I grabbed the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed downstairs, my boots thumping on the steps. It felt good, that weight on my back. It was mine, something I'd chosen. My phone buzzed as I hit the bottom stair, and I almost ignored it. But I glanced at the screen, and there it was, a flood of messages lighting up like warning lights on a dashboard. Marissa's name popped up first. You sure you don't want to come? It's no big deal. I stared at it, my jaw tightening. No big deal. She was still acting like this was some casual thing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be at my own son's birthday. I scrolled down, and there was Doreen. Don't make this about you. That one hit like a slap, and I could hear her voice in my head, all prim and cutting. Then Kylie, Marissa's sister, chimed in. Hope you're not serious. Eli won't remember. I let out a sharp breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. They didn't get it. Not one of them. This wasn't about Eli remembering. This was about me, about what it meant to be his dad, and they were stripping that away like it was nothing. I dropped the bag by the front door and sank onto the couch, my phone still in my hand. Part of me wanted to fire back, to type out everything boiling inside me. How they gutted me with this. How they didn't have the right to decide where I belonged. But what was the point? They'd just twist it, make me the bad guy for feeling anything at all. Instead, I opened the camera roll, found the picture of my plane ticket I'd screenshotted last night. First class to Jackson Hole, departure tomorrow, and stared at it. That was my answer, right there. Not words, not arguments, but action. I switched to my social media app, the one I barely used anymore, and posted the ticket with a caption. If I'm not invited, I'm unavailable. I hit send before I could overthink it, and the little notification sound felt like a door slamming shut. Good. Let them see it. Let them know I wasn't sitting here waiting for their permission. The phone buzzed again almost instantly. Likes, comments, a couple of shocked emojis from old friends I hadn't talked to in months. I didn't read them. I didn't need their opinions either. I tossed the phone onto the cushion next to me and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The half-finished Lego tower was still there on the coffee table, and it caught my eye again. I could almost hear Eli's laugh, that high-pitched squeal he'd let out when I'd knock it over on purpose just to see him smile. My chest ached, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about abandoning him. It was about refusing to let them treat me like I didn't matter. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, I had to get out, had to breathe air that didn't taste like their rules. I got up, grabbed my coat from the closet, and checked the time. I still had a few things to do, pick up some thermal socks, maybe a new pair of gloves, stuff I'd need for the snow. The airport shuttle was booked for tomorrow morning, and I wanted to be ready. I stepped outside, locking the door behind me, and the cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. It wasn't Wyoming cold, not yet, but it was a taste of what was coming. I walked to my truck, the duffel still slung over my shoulder, and tossed it in the back. Driving into town, I kept the radio off, letting my thoughts run. I pictured Marissa reading that post, her lips pressing into that thin line she does when she's mad. I pictured Doreen scoffing, telling whoever would listen that I was being dramatic. Good. Let them talk. I wasn't there to hear it. At the store, I moved quick. Socks, gloves, a scarf I didn't really need but grabbed anyway. The cashier, a kid with a bored look, barely glanced at me as he rang it up. Big trip? He mumbled, nodding at the pile. Yeah, I said, keeping it short. Heading somewhere cold. He shrugged, like it didn't matter, and it didn't, not to him. But to me, it was everything. I paid, grabbed the bag, and headed back to the truck. The sky was gray now, clouds rolling in, and it matched how I felt, stormy, but steady. I drove home, the streets quiet, and pulled into the driveway just as my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Whatever they had to say, it could wait. I was done answering. Back inside, I dropped the shopping bag by the duffel and went to the kitchen. I made a sandwich, ham, cheese, nothing fancy, and ate it standing up, leaning against the counter. The house felt different now, like it was just a pit stop, not a home. I washed the plate, set it to dry, and glanced at the clock. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. I grabbed my phone one last time, saw the notifications piling up, more messages, more reactions, but I powered it off. Silence. That's what I wanted, what I was chasing. I headed upstairs, lay on the bed without bothering to change, and closed my eyes. The duffel was packed, the ticket was posted, and I was gone, maybe not yet, but in every way that mattered. They'd see it soon enough. I stepped off the plane in Jackson Hole, and the cold hit me like a wall, sharp, crisp, and so different from the stale air I'd left behind. It rushed into my lungs, stinging a little, and I stood there on the tarmac for a second, just breathing it in. The mountains loomed in the distance, jagged and white, like something out of a painting I couldn't have dreamed up. I'd made it. My duffel bag hung heavy on my shoulder, but I didn't mind. I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The resentment, the hurt, all that mess with Marissa and Doreen, it was still there. Sure, but it was quieter now, muffled by the wind whipping across the runway. I adjusted my coat and headed toward the lodge shuttle, my boots crunching on the thin layer of snow already dusting the ground. The shuttle driver, a guy named Wes, gave me a nod as I climbed in. He was older, maybe 50, with a scruffy beard and a voice that sounded like he'd smoked one too many cigarettes. First time in Jackson? He asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror as he pulled away from the airport. Yeah, I said, settling into the seat. Needed a change. He chuckled, low and easy. You picked a good spot for it. Nothing like these mountains to clear your head. I didn't say much after that, just watched out the window as the town slid by little shops with wooden signs, snow piled up on the curbs, peaks rising higher the further we went. Wes kept talking, pointing out landmarks, telling me about some bar with the best chili in town. I nodded along, half listening, but mostly I was soaking it in, the quiet, the space, the fact that no one here knew me or cared why I'd come. The shuttle wound up a narrow road, trees closing in on both sides, and then there it was, my cabin. It sat alone, tucked against a hill, all dark wood and big windows glowing soft in the fading light. Wes dropped me off with a wave. Enjoy the solitude, man. Holler if you need a ride back. I thanked him and hauled my bag up the steps, the cold biting at my fingertips as I fumbled with the key. The door swung open, and I stopped dead. A fire was already crackling in the stone fireplace, the heat washing over me like a welcome. Flannel blankets were draped over a big leather couch, and those floor-to-ceiling windows showed nothing but snow and trees stretching out forever. Outside, a hot tub steamed under a little overhang, the water bubbling quietly. It was perfect, better than I'd pictured when I'd booked it in that angry haze back home. I dropped my bag by the door and walked to the windows, pressing my hand against the cold glass. The silence was thick, broken only by the pop of the fire, and it felt like a reset button had been hit. No buzzing phone, no voices telling me what I should feel, just me and this place. I pulled out my phone, snapped a quick selfie with the fire glowing behind me, and posted it. No balloons, no drama, just silence. I didn't check the likes right away, just tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the little fridge the lodge had stocked. The first sip was cold, sharp, and I sank into the couch, letting the warmth from the fire seep into my bones. This was what I'd needed, what I'd been chasing when I'd clicked that confirm button. Not just a trip, but clarity, something to remind me I didn't have to beg for a place in anyone's life. The cabin smelled like pine and smoke, and I closed my eyes for a minute, listening to the wind outside. I could have stayed home, could have fought harder to be at that party, but what would that have gotten me? A seat at the edge of the table, a forced smile while Doreen made her little jabs? No, this was better. I opened my eyes and looked around again, the wooden beams overhead, the thick rug under my feet, the way the firelight danced on the walls. It wasn't just a hideout, it was mine, something I'd chosen when they'd left me no choice at all. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and stood up to unpack. Not much, just the sweaters and socks I'd thrown in, the gloves I'd bought last minute. But it felt good to settle in, to make this space real. I stepped outside to check the hot tub, the cold slapping me awake again. The steam rose in thick clouds, and I dipped my hand in. Hot, almost too hot, perfect for later. The sky was darkening, stars starting to poke through, and I stood there, hands in my pockets, letting it sink in. Back home, they'd be setting up for Eli's party tomorrow, streamers, cake, all that noise, and I wouldn't be there. Part of me ached at that, a quick, sharp pang when I thought of Eli's face, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about him, it was about them, about how they decided I didn't fit. I went back inside, the warmth wrapping around me again, and grabbed another beer. The phone was lighting up now, likes, comments, probably some messages, but I ignored it. I didn't need validation from anyone back there. What I needed was this, the crackle of the fire, the cold glass in my hand, the quiet that let me hear my own thoughts for once. I sat back down, stretching my legs out, and let my mind wander. Tomorrow, I'd hit the slopes, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I'd booked a lesson, figured I'd start slow, but the idea of it, the speed, the cold air rushing past, made my pulse kick up a little. It was something new, something for me, not tied to anyone else's plans or rules. I took another sip, the beer settling me, and glanced at the fire. The log shifted, sending up a spray of sparks, and I felt a small, real smile tug at my mouth. This wasn't just escape, it was freedom. They could have their party, their maternal side of it. I had this, and it was already more than they could have given me. The night stretched out ahead, quiet and mine, and I leaned back, ready to let it unfold. I woke up to sunlight streaming through those big cabin windows, the kind of bright that bounces off snow and makes everything look sharper. The fire had burned down to embers overnight, but the room was still warm, cozy in a way I hadn't felt in forever. I stretched, my back popping from the couch where I'd crashed, and for a second, I just lay there, listening to the quiet. No phone buzzing, no voices, just the soft whistle of wind outside. It was Saturday, Eli's birthday, and back home, they'd be blowing up balloons, setting out snacks, getting ready to sing without me. The thought stung, but I shook it off. I'd made my choice, and I was here now in Jackson Hole, with a day ahead that was all mine. I got up, made coffee in the little kitchen, and stood by the window, mug in hand, watching the mountains glow under the morning sun. This was my therapy, and it was already working. I'd booked a ski lesson for today, something to keep me moving, to keep my head from spinning back to what I was missing. I pulled on my gear, thermal socks, the new gloves, a jacket I hadn't worn in years, and grabbed the ski pass from the counter. The lodge shuttle picked me up right on time, Wes behind the wheel again, grinning like he'd been waiting to see me. Skiing today? Huh? Good call, he said, pulling onto the road. Powder's fresh, best day for it. I nodded, managing a small smile. First time in a while. Hope I don't need it too bad. He laughed, a rough, friendly sound. You'll be fine. They've got good folks up there to show you the ropes. The ride was quick, the hills rolling by, and I felt a flicker of excitement, something I hadn't expected. This was new, and I needed new. At the ski rental shop, I met Lane, my instructor. She was maybe 30, with short hair tucked under a beanie and a grin that said she'd seen her share of shaky first-timers. Callum, right? Ready to hit the snow? She asked, handing me a pair of skis. Yeah, I said, taking them, the weight solid in my hands. Let's see if I remember how this works. She walked me through the basics, how to clip in, how to shift my weight, how to stop without plowing into a tree. Her voice was calm, steady, with a little edge of humor that made it easy to listen. We started on a gentle slope, just a practice run, and I wobbled at first, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. But then I got it, the rhythm, the lean, and I made it down without falling. Lane clapped, grinning. Not bad, Cal. You're a natural. I laughed, breathless, the cold air burning my lungs. Tell that to my knees. The next run was steeper, faster, and I felt it, the rush, the way the wind cut past me, the snow crunching under my skis. My mind went blank, no room for anything but the slope and the next turn. It was exactly what I'd needed, this clean wipe of everything back home. Lane kept me going, pushing me a little harder each time, and by the end, I was grinning like a kid, sweat soaking my shirt under the jacket. "You're hooked now," she said, unclipping her skis. "Tomorrow, we'll try something bigger." I nodded, still catching my breath. "Deal." The mountains stretched out around us, wide and endless, and I felt steady for the first time in days. Back at the cabin, I peeled off my gear and headed straight for the hot tub. The water was scalding, steam rising into the cold air, and I sank in with a groan, a bourbon in hand from the bottle I'd found in the cabinet. The heat melted into my muscles, and I leaned my head back, staring up at the sky turning pink and orange. It was peaceful, perfect, and then my phone buzzed on the ledge where I'd left it. I almost ignored it, but I glanced over messages, piling up again. "Trent, my brother-in-law, why are you being so dramatic?" "Doreen, of course, you abandoned your own son." I stared at them, the bourbon glass cold against my palm, and felt a laugh bubble up, short, hard, empty. They were still at it, still trying to drag me back into their mess. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my camera, snapped a shot of the mountain glowing in the sunset, and posted it. Sometimes, peace is the best gift you can give yourself. Then I tossed the phone aside, letting it clatter on the wood. The water bubbled around me, and I took a slow sip of the bourbon, the burn matching the heat on my skin. Back home, they'd be cutting cake right about now, singing to Eli while he clapped his little hands. I pictured it for a second, his face lit up, Marissa smiling, Doreen fussing over everything, and it hurt, but not as much as I'd thought it would. I wasn't there, and yeah, that sucked. But this was mine. The mountains, the snow, the quiet, they didn't get to take that away. I closed my eyes, letting the steam wrap around me, and thought about the day. Skiing with Lane, feeling my body figure it out, the way the world shrank down to just me and the slope. It was simple, clean, and I hadn't realized how much I'd needed that until now. The sky darkened, stars popping out one by one, and I stayed there, soaking, sipping, letting the cold air mix with the heat. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. Whatever they had to say, it could wait forever if I wanted. I wasn't their punching bag anymore, not their fallback guy to blame when things went sideways. I finished the bourbon, set the glass down, and sank lower in the water, the jets rumbling against my back. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe grab a beer at that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, though, this was enough: the hot tub, the mountains, the silence. I'd left their party behind, and out here, I was finding something better. Peace wasn't just a word. It was this, right here, and I wasn't letting it go. I woke up Sunday morning to the smell of coffee brewing in the cabin's little machine, the kind of slow drip that fills the air with something steady and warm. The hot tub had knocked me out last night, and I'd slept hard, no dreams, just a deep, blank rest I hadn't had in weeks. I rolled off the couch, my muscles stiff from skiing but loose from the soak, and grabbed my phone off the counter where I'd left it. The screen was lit up with notifications, but one stood out, a voicemail from Amira, my cousin, the only one in the family who ever got me. Her name made me pause, a little spark of curiosity cutting through the haze. I poured a mug of coffee, the steam curling up, and hit play, leaning against the counter as her voice crackled through. "Call me. You are not going to believe what happened." That was it, short, sharp, with a laugh behind it. I grinned despite myself. Amira always had a way of pulling me out of my own head. I took a sip of the coffee, strong and black, and dialed her back. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "Cal, oh my God, where do I even start?" she said, her voice buzzing with energy. "The party yesterday, it was a train wreck. You dodged a bullet, trust me." I set the mug down and walked to the window, the mountains stretching out white and calm under the morning sun. "What happened?" I asked, keeping it casual, but my pulse kicked up a little. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I could not ask. Amira didn't hold back, she never did. "Okay, so it starts fine, right? Balloons, cake, Eli's all cute in his little hat. Then Doreen gets up to make this toast, and get this, she says something about men who couldn't make it, all smug like she's scoring points. Marissa rolls her eyes, but you can tell she's pissed." I snorted, picturing it, Doreen with her wine glass, that fake smile she wears like a mask. "Sounds about right," I said, and Amira laughed. "Oh, it gets better. So Derek shows up, you know, your buddy from work? He's invited, which is already weird since he's not family, and he brings his new girlfriend. Guess who? Marissa's old roommate, Tara. The one she hates." I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. "No way." "Yes way," Amira said, glee in her voice. "Marissa's face, Cal, I wish you'd seen it. She goes white, then red, and Kylie's over there losing it, yelling at Derek like he planned it. Meanwhile, Doreen's trying to play peacemaker, but she snaps at some random and instead, and Eli, he's overstimulated, screaming his head off. I laughed, a real one this time, sharp and loud in the quiet cabin. Keep going, I said, leaning into the story now. Amira was on a roll. So someone, nobody's owning up, knocks over the cake trying to calm Eli down. It's this big, fancy thing, chocolate and frosting everywhere, and Marissa just screams. Like horror movie screams. People start leaving, grabbing their coats, and the whole thing's over before the sun's even down. It was chaos, Cal. Absolute chaos. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting it sink in, the warmth spreading through me as I stared out at the snow. Yes, I picked the right weekend to disappear, I said, and Amira cackled. You have no idea. They're all blaming each other now. Doreen's mad at Marissa, Kylie's mad at Derek, and somehow you're the bad guy for not being there to fix it. I shook my head, setting the mug down on the windowsill. The fire was still smoldering from last night, and I tossed a log on, watching the flames catch. They can't pin this on me, I said, more to myself than her. Oh, they're trying, Amira said. Marissa's been whining to anyone who'll listen, and Doreen's acting like you cursed the whole day by leaving. It's ridiculous. I grinned, poking at the fire with the iron rod. Let them spin it however they want. I'm not there to hear it. Amira's voice softened a little. Good for you, Cal. Seriously. This trip, it's the smartest thing you've done in a while. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, it is. We hung up after that, and I stood there by the fire, the heat licking at my hands. The cabin was quiet again, just the crackle of the logs and the faint hum of the wind outside. I pictured the party falling apart, Doreen's toast, Derek and Tara walking in, the cake hitting the floor, and it felt like a movie I'd walked out of halfway through. I didn't need to see the ending. I already knew it was a mess. And here I was, miles away, with coffee in my hand and mountains out my window. I didn't feel guilty, not like they wanted me to. I felt satisfied, like I'd bet on myself and won. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through the messages I'd ignored last night. Trent, Doreen, Kylie, all the same noise, trying to drag me back into their drama. I didn't answer. What was there to say? They'd made their party, and it had blown up in their faces. I wasn't the one who'd knocked over the cake or started the yelling. I took my coffee back to the couch and sat down, stretching my legs out. The sun was climbing higher now, turning the snow outside into a sheet of white fire. I thought about Eli for a second, his little hat, his cries, and it tugged at me, but not enough to pull me under. I'd see him soon, away from all that mess, just me and him. The fire popped, sending a spark up the chimney, and I leaned back, letting the warmth settle over me. Amira's call had been a gift, a front-row seat to their collapse without having to sit through it. I didn't need to gloat. I just needed this quiet distance, a space where their voices couldn't reach. I finished the coffee, the mug empty now, and set it aside. Outside, the day was waiting, maybe another run on the slopes, maybe just a walk through the snow. Whatever it was, it'd be mine, not theirs. They could keep their imploded party. I had this, and it was better than anything they could have ruined. I sat by the fire that afternoon, the cabin glowing soft with the light bouncing off the snow outside, when my phone started buzzing again. The logs crackled, spitting little sparks, and I almost didn't check it. I was getting good at ignoring the noise. But the screen kept lighting up, one message after another, and I gave in, grabbing it off the couch with a sigh. Marissa's name popped up first. This wouldn't have happened if you'd just come. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the words, and felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat. Typical, everything goes to hell, and somehow it's my fault for not being there to mop it up. Next was Doreen. You left us to deal with this mess. That one made my jaw clench, the nerve of her acting like I'd abandoned some sacred duty. Then Kylie, you made Eli's first birthday about you. That hit harder, a cheap shot, and for a second, I pictured Eli's face, his little hands clapping, but I shook it off. They were grasping, flailing, trying to pin their disaster on me. I set the phone down hard, the clack loud against the wood of the coffee table, and leaned back, rubbing my face. They excluded me, shut me out of my own son's birthday like I was some stranger, and now they wanted me to feel bad because it fell apart? I laughed again, short, joyless, the sound swallowed by the cabin's quiet. They didn't get it, and they never would. I wasn't the one who'd turned Eli's day into a circus. That was on them, on Doreen's snide toast and Marissa's grudges and whoever'd smashed the cake. I grabbed my coffee mug from earlier, still half full and cold now, and took a sip anyway, the bitterness matching my mood. The fire popped, and I stared into it, letting the heat sink in while their words rattled around in my head. My phone buzzed again, and I almost chucked it across the room, but it was Amira this time. I opened it quick, expecting more gossip, and she didn't disappoint. Doreen just told Grandma you cursed the party. She said it's bad blood. Grandma's not buying it, though. I grinned, a real one this time, picturing Grandma Ruth tiny, fierce, with a tongue that could cut glass. If anyone could see through Doreen's nonsense, it was her. I could hear her now, rolling her eyes, telling them all to stop whining. Bad blood, I muttered to myself, shaking my head. More like bad planning and worse attitudes. I didn't text Amira back yet, just set the phone down and stood up, stretching my legs. The cabin felt too still all of a sudden, like I needed to move, to shake off the weight they were still trying to dump on me. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, the cold hitting me like a slap, crisp and clean. The snow crunched under my boots as I walked toward the trees, no real plan, just needing the air. The mountains loomed ahead, steady and silent, and I stopped, hands in my pockets, breathing deep. Back home, they were probably still spinning their blame game. Marissa crying to her friends, Doreen lecturing anyone who'd listen, Kylie sulking like a kid. And here I was, the scapegoat, the one they'd decided to pile it all on. It'd be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I kicked at the snow, sending a little puff into the air, and thought about how predictable they were. Exclude me, then act shocked when I didn't stick around to take their crap. The wind picked up, rustling the pines, and I turned back toward the cabin, my breath fogging in front of me. Inside, the fire was still going strong, and I tossed another log on, watching the flames flare up. My phone was where I'd left it, glowing with their messages, and I made a decision. I was done with it. I opened each one, Marissa's, Doreen's, Kylie's, and HitBlock, one by one. The screen went quiet, and it felt like cutting a rope I'd been tangled in. Amira's number stayed. She was the only one worth keeping. But the rest? Gone. They could yell into the void all they wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. I tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the fridge, the cold glass sharp against my hand. I sank back into the cushions, the fire warming my feet, and took a long sip. Blocking them wasn't just about shutting them out. It was about taking back what they'd tried to steal. They didn't get to dictate how I felt. Not about Eli. Not about myself. I pictured Grandma Ruth again, probably sitting in her old chair with that look she gets, telling Doreen to quit her dramatics. Bad blood, I said out loud, smirking. If anything, the bad blood was theirs, spilling it all over each other while I was out here, free of it. The beer went down easy, and I let my head tip back, the cabin's quiet wrapping around me like a blanket. Outside, the sky was turning gray, clouds rolling in over the peaks, but it didn't bother me. Let it snow, let it storm. I wasn't going anywhere. This trip wasn't just a break, it was a line in the sand. They'd made me the bad guy, fine. I'd play that part, but on my terms, not theirs. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and grabbed the flannel blanket off the armrest, pulling it over my legs. The firelight danced on the walls, and I felt something settle in me, anger still, sure, but quieter now, mixed with something stronger. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done spinning with them. Amira's text about Grandma stuck with me, a little lifeline to the family that still made sense, and I held on to it. The rest? They were on their own. I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking in, and let the day fade out, their voices lost in the crackle of the fire. I woke up Monday morning with the cabin still dark, the kind of quiet that only comes with snow muffling the world outside. The fire was just embers now, a faint glow in the hearth, and I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling beams. My phone was silent, no buzzing, no notifications, thanks to the blocks I'd put up yesterday. It felt good, like I'd finally turned off a radio that had been blaring static for too long. I didn't know what Marissa or Doreen or Kylie were saying now, and I didn't care. I'd given myself this, Jackson Hole, the mountains, the space, and I wasn't letting them claw it back. I sat up, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and decided right then, I wasn't ready to go home. 5 more days. That's what I'd give myself. I grabbed my phone, opened the travel app, and extended the trip, cabin, ski pass, shuttle, all of it. Done. The coffee machine gurgled as I set it going, and I stepped outside to feel the air. It was cold, sharp enough to sting my face, and the snow had piled up overnight, a fresh layer blanketing the porch. The mountains stood tall against a pale sky, and I breathed it in, letting it fill me up. Back inside, The coffee was ready, and I poured a mug, the heat seeping into my hands as I leaned against the counter. Today was mine. No plans yet, just possibilities. I'd booked a backcountry ski tour with Lane later, something she'd mentioned during our lesson, and I was already looking forward to it, the quiet of the trails, the burn in my legs. But first, I wanted to soak this in, this feeling of being untethered. The ski tour started mid-morning, and Lane met me at the lodge, her grin as easy as ever. "Ready for the real stuff?" she asked, tossing me a pair of poles. "Let's see if you can keep up." I laughed, clipping into my skis. No promises. We headed out, away from the main slopes, the snow crunching under us as the trees closed in. It was different out here, wilder, quieter, just the sound of our breathing and the swish of skis. Lane led the way, pointing out tracks in the snow, deer, maybe a fox, and I followed, my body settling into the rhythm. The air was cold, my lungs burning, but it felt good, like I was shedding something with every push forward. We stopped at a clearing, the mountains rising sharp around us, and I caught my breath, the world so still it almost hummed. Back at the lodge that evening, I stumbled into a whiskey tasting in the bar, a little setup with wooden tables and a guy pouring samples from bottles I'd never heard of. I joined in, sliding onto a bench next to a couple from Vermont, Mel and Jonas. They were older, maybe 60, with quick laughs and stories about skiing here every winter. "What brings you out here solo?" Mel asked, her eyes crinkling as she sipped her drink. I took a swallow of the whiskey, smooth, smoky, and shrugged. "Missed a birthday party. Best decision I've ever made." Jonas chuckled, raising his glass. "To that, then. Family can wait." We clinked, and the warmth spread through me, not just from the drink, but from the ease of it. No judgment, just company. We swapped stories, mine about the slopes, theirs about a moose they'd seen last year, and the night blurred into laughter and refills. Later, back in the cabin, I stoked the fire and grabbed my phone, the whiskey still buzzing in my head. I snapped a shot of the fireplace, the flames licking up, and posted it. I don't fix family messes anymore. That job's been outsourced to karma. I tossed the phone aside and sank into the couch, the blanket pulled over my legs. The silence from my blocked numbers was golden. No texts, no guilt trips, just the crackle of the fire and the faint howl of wind outside. I thought about Mel and Jonas, how simple it had been to sit with them, no history dragging us down. That's what I wanted now, moments that didn't come with strings. The firelight danced on the walls, and I let my mind drift. Back home, they were probably still reeling from the party, Marissa licking her wounds, Doreen spinning her tales. I didn't need to know the details. Amira would fill me in if it was worth it. For now, I had this. The cabin, the snow, the day I'd carved out for myself. I pictured Lane out on the trail, her easy confidence, and the way Mel had patted my arm like I was an old friend. It wasn't just escape anymore. It was something I was building, piece by piece. The whiskey lingered on my tongue, and I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking deep. 5 more days stretched ahead, and I could feel them, open, clean, mine. I got up, grabbed a glass of water to cut through the buzz, and stood by the window. The snow was falling again, soft and steady, burying the world outside. I didn't feel trapped, though. I felt free. No contact, no apologies, just me and this place. I thought about that post, the one about karma, and smirked. Let them figure it out. I wasn't their cleanup crew anymore. I finished the water, set the glass down, and headed back to the couch, the fire still going strong. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe hit that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, I pulled the blanket tighter and let the quiet take over. This was what I'd come for: clear skies, clear head, no one else's mess to carry. The night settled around me, and I leaned into it, ready for whatever came next, as long as it was mine. I woke up Tuesday to the sound of snow tapping the cabin windows, a soft, steady rhythm that pulled me out of sleep. The fire was out, just a pile of ash now, and the room was cool, but I didn't mind. I lay there for a minute, staring at the wooden ceiling, feeling the quiet wrap around me like a second blanket. My phone was still on the couch where I'd tossed it last night, and I didn't reach for it, not yet. The whiskey tasting with Mel and Jonas lingered in my head, their easy laughter, the way they'd toasted my escape without prying. It had been a good night, simple and light, and I wanted to hold on to that. I got up, stretched my stiff legs, and started the coffee, the familiar gurgle filling the silence as I looked out at the snow piling up. It was a new day, and I wasn't letting anyone back home pull me out of it. The coffee was hot, burning my tongue a little as I took the first sip, and I decided to call Amira while it cooled. She picked up quick, her voice bright despite the early hour. Cal, you still alive out there? I grinned, leaning against the counter. Barely. Too much whiskey last night. She laughed, loud and sharp. Good. You deserve it. Things here, though, they're a mess. I took another sip, bracing myself. What now? She didn't hesitate. Marissa's been crying to everyone, her friends, Trent, even the mailman probably. Says the party was a disaster because you weren't there to keep things steady. Doreen's blaming Marissa for not controlling Derek and Tara. Kylie blocked half the family after some big fight with Trent, and he started this group chat to fix everything. It's a circus. I shook my head, smirking into my muck. Sounds like they're doing fine without me. Oh, it gets better, Amira said, her tone gleeful. Grandma Ruth told them all to grow up, called Doreen a meddling hen to her face. She's the only one keeping it real. I laughed, picturing Grandma's glare, that no-nonsense way she cuts through the noise. Wish I'd seen that, I said, and Amira snorted. You should've. Anyway, Marissa sent you an email, figured you blocked her texts. Said she needs to talk when you're back. I froze, the mug halfway to my mouth. An email. Of course she'd find a way around. She can wait, I said, keeping my voice flat. I'm not rushing back to play therapist. Amira's voice softened. Good. Stay out there, Cal. They'll figure it out, or they won't. Not your problem. We hung up, and I set the phone down, staring at it for a second. An email. I didn't open it, didn't even look for it. Whatever Marissa wanted, it could sit there, unread, until I was ready. If I ever was. I finished my coffee and grabbed my ski gear, the routine settling me. The snow was still falling outside, light and steady, and I headed for the slopes, the shuttle picking me up with Wes at the wheel again. Back at it? He asked, grinning. Can't stop now, I said, and he nodded like he got it. Lane was waiting at the lodge, and we hit a steeper run this time, my legs burning as I carved through the powder. I went faster, freer, the wind whipping past, and it felt like I was leaving more than just tracks in the snow. After the run, I stopped at the lodge gift shop, my breath still fogging in the cold. I wandered the aisles, not looking for much, until I saw it, a small sketchbook, leather-bound, with a pencil tucked in the spine. It caught my eye, and I grabbed it, an idea sparking. Back at the cabin, I stoked the fire and sat down, the book open on my lap. I wasn't an artist, not really, but I started sketching anyway, a rough outline of the mountains I'd seen today, jagged peaks under a wide sky. Then, below it, I added the date I'd left, the day I'd boarded that plane. My liberation day. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I liked how it looked, simple, solid, a mark of something I'd claimed. I thought about turning it into a tattoo, something permanent to carry with me. The idea stuck, growing as I flipped the pencil between my fingers. I'd always wanted ink, something small but real, and this felt right, a mountain range, that date, a reminder of when I'd stopped letting them define me. I sketched it again, cleaner this time, and leaned back, the fire warming my legs. Amira's words echoed, Marissa crying, Doreen pointing fingers, Kylie sulking, and I let them drift away, smoke up the chimney. They were spiraling, just like she'd said, and I wasn't jumping in to stop it. Not anymore. The snow kept falling outside, burying the porch, and I got up to grab a beer, the cold bottle a contrast to the heat in the room. I didn't check my email, didn't even glance at my phone. Marissa's "we need to talk" could wait forever if I wanted. I sat back down, the sketchbook still open, and took a sip, the firelight flickering over the page. I pictured her typing that message, maybe pacing her kitchen, thinking I'd come running. She was wrong. I was here, sketching mountains, skiing slopes, letting their mess spin out without me. The beer went down easy, and I added a few more lines to the drawing's sharp edges, a little shadow. It was rough, but it was enough. I leaned back, the blanket pulled over my knees, and watched the flames. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe ask Lane about that bar Wes kept mentioning. For now, this was it, the cabin, the snow, the sketch in my hands. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done circling with them. The fire popped, and I smiled, small but real. This trip wasn't just a break, it was a beginning, and I was holding on to it, one line at a time. The night stretched out, quiet and mine, and I let it settle, the weight of their chaos left far behind. I woke up Monday morning, the last day of my extended trip, to a sky so blue it looked like it had been painted on. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving everything outside the cabin crisp and bright, the kind of morning that makes you want to stand still and take it in. I rolled off the couch, my back creaking from too many nights there, and started the coffee, the familiar smell filling the air as I shuffled to the window. The mountains glowed under the sunrise, soft pinks and oranges spilling over the trees, and I stood there, mug in hand, watching it unfold. This was it, my last day in Jackson Hole, and I didn't feel that pull to go back, not yet. I'd found something here, something I wasn't ready to let go of, and I wanted to hold it tight before the real world came crashing in. I took my coffee outside, stepping onto the porch in my boots and coat, the cold biting at my face as I leaned against the railing. The air was sharp, clean, and I sipped slow, letting the warmth fight the chill. Back home, Marissa's email was probably still sitting there, unread, and the thought of it didn't twist me up like it might have a week ago. Doreen's blame, Kylie's whining, all their noise, it was distant now, like a radio station I'd tuned out. I pictured Eli for a second, his little grin, and that ached, but it wasn't enough to drag me under. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, this sunrise, this quiet, it was mine, and I wasn't trading it for anything. I went back inside, the fire still dead from last night, and decided to skip it. No point building one just to leave it burning. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture of the sunrise through the window, the light catching on the snow like sparks. I posted it, my fingers moving fast. Turns out I didn't miss much. I gained everything. I didn't check the likes, didn't wait for replies, just tossed the phone onto the couch and finished my coffee standing up. The words felt true, solid, and I didn't need anyone's approval to back them up. I'd come here raw, cut open by that text from Marissa, and now I was leaving with something better, peace, clarity, a line I'd drawn for myself. I packed slow, folding my sweaters, stuffing the socks into the duffel, the sketchbook tucked in last. That mountain drawing, the date below it, it was rough, but it meant something, and I wasn't letting it get lost in the shuffle. The cabin felt smaller now, like it was ready to let me go, and I took one last look around, the big windows, the leather couch, the hearth where I'd burned through their drama night after night. It had been good to me, this place, and I zipped the bag shut with a nod, like I was thanking it. The shuttle was coming soon, west behind the wheel one last time, and I'd be on a plane by afternoon. But I wasn't done with the day yet, I wanted one more piece of it. I headed to the slopes, the snow crunching under my boots, and rented skis for a quick run. Lane wasn't around, but I didn't need her. I'd figured it out enough to go solo. The lift carried me up, the cold wind whipping past, and I looked out over the valley, the trees dusted white, the peaks standing tall. At the top, I pushed off, fast and free, my legs steady now, the rhythm second nature. The snow flew around me, the world blurring into white and blue, and I laughed, loud, real, the sound swallowed by the mountain. It was over too quick, but it was enough, a last taste of what I'd found here. I unclipped at the bottom, my breath fogging, and handed the skis back, my chest light. Back at the cabin, I grabbed my bag and waited for Wes, the sun climbing higher now. He pulled up right on time, grinning through the window. "Leaving already?" he asked as I climbed in. "Yeah," I said, tossing the duffel in the back. "Gotta get back eventually." He nodded, pulling onto the road. "You look different, man. Lighter." I shrugged, managing a small smile. "Feels that way." He didn't push, just drove, the hills sliding by as we headed for the airport. I watched them go, the snow, the pines, and felt a pang, not regret, but something close to gratitude. This place had given me more than I'd expected, and I wasn't forgetting it. At the airport, I checked in, the ticket in my hand a quiet end to it all. The flight was smooth, the mountains shrinking below me, and I leaned back, the sketchbook in my lap. I didn't open it, just held it, the weight a reminder. Back home, I'd land in the mess, Marissa's email, whatever fallout was waiting, but I wasn't the same guy who'd left. I'd set a boundary here, one they couldn't cross, and I'd stick to it. No more showing up where I wasn't wanted, no more swallowing their shame. The plane hummed, and I closed my eyes, the sunrise still burned into my head. When I got home, the house was dark, quiet, just like I'd left it. I dropped the bag by the door and stood there, the Lego tower still on the coffee table. It hit me, Eli, the birthday I'd missed, but I didn't let it pull me down. I'd see him soon, just us, no circus. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, cracked it open, and stepped outside, the night cool and still. The stars were out, not as bright as Wyoming's, but enough. I raised the bottle to the sky, a small salute to the horizon I'd left behind, and whispered, "Here's to peace." The first sip was cold, sharp, and I grinned, zero regret, all gain. Whatever came next, I'd handle it my way, and they'd have to figure out how to live with that. I'd never been nervous meeting someone's parents until I met Islas. The walk from the valley to the entrance of Castellan felt like crossing a tightrope. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city lights beyond, their steady glow doing nothing to calm the storm in my chest. My suit jacket fit well. My tie was straight. I practiced my smile in the reflection of the glass door, willing warmth into my voice. Isla offered her hand and whispered, "You've got this." Her confidence should have steadied me, but as her father's car eased away, I realized it was her world I was about to enter, and I didn't even know the beginning of the rules. They led me to a private dining room reserved for high-stakes meetings and corporate negotiations. The mahogany table gleamed under soft pendant lights, glassware aligned like a row of sentinels. A waiter in a crisp tuxedo poured champagne into flutes that caught the light and refracted a promise of celebration, a promise I was already doubting. Across from me, Isla's parents sat as though sculpted from marble and silk. Roland Mercer's tailored suit fit like armor, his gaze measured, unflinching. Marianne, seated beside him, offered me a polite smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. I swallowed. My ring felt heavy in its box under my jacket pocket. We exchanged pleasantries, school, work, memories of how Isla and I met. Every answer felt rehearsed. I talked about my consulting firm's latest project, trying to sound successful enough but not threatening. Roland nodded once, curtly. He asked about my family, where they lived, what they did. I spoke about my parents' small business, how my sister taught kindergarten. I smiled as I spoke, recalling happy memories. But with every word, I sensed his amusement grow, like a wave gathering strength behind my back, ready to crash. The first course arrived, scallops nestled on a smear of cauliflower puree, delicate and white. I took one bite and forced another smile. The conversation shifted to future plans, children, house, traditions. I imagined talking about my dream home, a modest house I'd renovate for Isla. Instead, I feigned agreement and nibbled at artisan bread. The waiter topped up my glass. The champagne's sweetness turned sour on my tongue. Then came the joke. Roland leaned back, steepling his fingers. "So, Julian," he said, voice low and mocking, "what do you plan to do when the bank account runs dry? Or is that when you plan to bounce?" His words landed like stones, each syllable resonating across the table. He spoke as though he knew me better than I knew myself. My chest tightened. I glanced at Isla. She laughed. Not politely. Not that nervous chuckle I might have forgiven. It was a full-throated laugh that wrapped around his words and made them stick in my throat. Her eyes sparkled with amusement, as though I'd done something worthy of ridicule, as though I'd earned my place as the butt of a joke. My ring finger tingled. I could almost feel the weight of expectation shifting from my hand to the table. I took a breath, looked at the ring on her hand, and felt my reflection shatter. Time slowed. I saw the silver band catch the light, felt the hollow bloom of betrayal in my chest. My mind raced through every moment of our engagement, the night I surprised her on the rooftop with fairy lights, the way she pressed her cheek to mine as the skyline kissed the horizon, the promise we whispered to each other under stars. All those moments multiplied in that second, collapsing into a single, undeniable truth. This life wasn't ours. It belonged to a family that would never see me as more than an accessory. I stood up. The room hushed. The waiters froze. My chair scraped the floor, and I felt every eye turn to me. I didn't know what I would say, but the ring left my finger before words formed. I placed it beside her wine glass, its crimson liquid rippling, as though startled by my movement. I felt the cool metal slide across the table's surface and come to rest, a fragile emblem of everything undone. I looked at Isla one last time. Her smile faltered, confusion flickering across her features. There was fear there, maybe pity. I wondered if she realized in that moment how deep the cut went. But she didn't move to stop me. She didn't reach out. She only watched as I turned away. I walked out. No scene, no shouting. Just the soft click of my shoes on the marble floor, each step sounding a finale to a dream I'd once believed in. The door closed behind me, sealing the laughter and the luxury and the lie. Outside, the cool night air wrapped me like a cloak, bracing me for a silence I'd never known could feel so loud. Standing under the street lamp, I closed my eyes and let the city hum around me. The future lay ahead, unwritten, uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something stronger than fear, relief. The joke had ended everything I thought I wanted. Now, I could discover what I truly needed. I didn't go back to our condo that night. Instead, I checked into the Grand Meridian Hotel under a false name, carrying only a duffel bag and the hollow weight of betrayal. The lobby clock read midnight when I handed over my credit card, the clerk's practiced smile failing to reach his eyes as he asked for an ID I didn't have. Upstairs, I unlocked the door to room 712 and flicked on the overhead light, the brightness stabbing at my temples. I dropped my bag by the bed, kicked off my shoes, and sank into the plush mattress, staring at the ceiling as the shadows of the chandelier's crystal prisms danced above me like mocking specters. Sleep drifted in fragments. I dreamed of laughter, hollow, echoing laughter that grew louder with each replay. I saw Isla's face twisting into amusement at my expense, her eyes bright with derision. I felt my chest tighten as I tried to speak, but the joke was always on me, my voice swallowed by a tide of champagne and contempt. I woke gasping, cold sweat plastering my hair to my forehead. When I reached for my phone, the screen was streaked with fingerprints and dozens of missed notifications. Messages piled up in a digital avalanche, Isla asking if I was okay, her mother imploring me to forgive, friends feigning concern, each text an echo of the same question: what happened? They hadn't heard her father call me a gold digger or witnessed the ease with which she sold me out. They only saw the aftermath, the void I'd left in my place. I stared at her name blinking at the top of the screen and considered deleting everything. But I didn't. Instead, I switched the phone to Do Not Disturb, silence the world. Morning came too soon. I sat on the edge of the unmade bed, running my hands through my hair, willing the events of last night into unreality. A pot of lukewarm coffee sat on the bedside table. I took a shallow sip and grimaced. My stomach churned. I pulled the curtain aside and watched city traffic crawl below, cars inching forward like people moving through life. I felt like one of those cars, boxed in, waiting for permission to move. Eventually, I relented and propelled myself out of bed. I showered, letting hot water sluice away the residual sting of rejection, and dressed in fresh clothes I'd thrown together at the last minute. I paused before leaving, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my cheeks hollow. I looked like a man who'd lost more than a relationship. I looked like someone who had lost himself. The elevator ride down was silent except for the soft hum of machinery. On the street, I hailed a cab without looking back. I gave the driver the address of my favorite coffee shop, a no-frills place that felt like home. When I sat down at a window table, I ordered a double espresso and an everything bagel. The barista set my cup in front of me with a sympathetic smile. I nodded in gratitude, fingers tracing patterns on the ceramic before lifting it to my lips. The bitterness grounded me. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Theo, my best friend since college, the one person who'd seen me at my highest and my lowest without flinching. I let the call go to voicemail. A minute later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Martina Elwell, the CEO I'd been consulting for. Are we still on for this afternoon? No mention of anything else. That familiarity offered a bittersweet comfort. Work was the one place where I still had control. I glanced at my reflection in the window as I sipped my coffee, watching life pulse by on the sidewalk. A mother steadied her toddler, a businessman argued into his phone, a street musician coaxed mournful notes from a saxophone. The world continued as though nothing had happened, indifferent to the rupture in my life. I wished I could slip into that anonymity, become another face in the crowd, forget who I was supposed to be. But I couldn't, because I knew something that these strangers didn't. Their laughter didn't matter. Their judgments, their opinions, they held no power over me unless I gave it away. And in that moment, as the steam curled from my cup and the city roared outside, I decided I wouldn't. I retrieved my phone, scrolling through the voicemails and messages. Theo's frantic voice poured through the speaker. Julian, man, where are you? I've been calling you all night. Isla texted me, said you left. Look, if I was you, I'd call her back. I mean, she's your fiancée. His tone was tentative, afraid to push too hard. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I chewed on my lower lip and typed a simple reply. Call me later. One by one, I cleared the rest. Martina confirming our meeting, old college buddies checking in, even a notification from my bank about an overdraft alert. I deleted half the emails in my inbox until I could breathe. Then I slid my phone into my pocket and stood. The world outside the cafe felt enormous, brimming with opportunities I'd never noticed before. I realized that for the first time in months, maybe years, I was standing on my own. Later that afternoon, I met Martina in her office. She looked up from her desk, concern flickering in her eyes as I shook her hand. Everything okay? She asked. I gave a curt nod. Fine. I sat down and outlined the next steps for our project, focusing on product launch timelines and revenue forecasts. She watched me with an unreadable expression, then nodded and took notes. Work was familiar: calculators, spreadsheets, strategy. It didn't require me to be someone's prop or punching bag. It required competence, vision, and integrity. After the meeting, I walked back to the cafe, bought another espresso, and sent Theo a text: "Meet me at the old park bench in an hour." He replied almost instantly: "On my way." I sat outside, shoulders squared, breathing in the spring air. When Theo arrived, he flopped onto the bench next to me, eyes wide with questions. I handed him my coffee and said, "I'm okay, man. Not great, but okay." He nodded, studying me like a wounded comrade. "You want to talk about it?" I stared at my cup, the late afternoon sun glinting off its rim. "I'm not going back," I said. "Not to her. Not to that life." It felt like a funeral, Theo. Like I was mourning the death of something I thought was love. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Then don't." I looked up at him and managed a small, genuine smile. "No, I won't." As we sat there, the world carried on around us, cars honking, children laughing, life unfolding in riotous color. And I realized that while some endings felt like funerals, they were also beginnings. The echo after the door closed wasn't a dirge, it was an invitation. An invitation to step into a story of my own making. I took a sip of coffee, let its warmth spread through me, and stood, ready to answer the call. The morning sun filtered through the blinds in soft, forgiving slats, but I felt no warmth. Coffee sat cooling on the kitchen counter, its steam dissipating like my last hopes of reconciliation. I'd barely touched it when I heard a soft knock at the door, 3 deliberate taps that echoed too familiarly. My heart lurched, and I stood frozen, the mug clutched in my hand. Isla. After everything, she was here. I set the cup down with more force than intended and moved toward the door, each step heavy as if I were wading through water. Through the peephole, I saw her standing on the stoop, eyes rimmed red, hair slightly mussed around her face. She held a crumpled bouquet of daisies. Her favorite, wrapped in tissue paper. It was morning, but she'd come straight from home, not stopping to change or compose herself. My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to slam the door and leave her standing there. Part of me dreaded to see her pain. I opened the door without greeting. The hallway light spilled between us. She looked past me as though seeing something I could not, some memory I buried beneath anger. The daisies trembled in her hand. Her lips quivered. "Julian," she began. Her voice wavered like a song missing its chorus, familiar, but unsteady. "I'm so sorry." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying her. Her apology had the ring of rehearsed remorse. I'd heard it before during arguments that ended with a phone call and a promise to change. But this was different. I wasn't the same man who cared enough to listen. "Sorry isn't going to fix what happened," I said, voice low. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she lifted her chin. "Last night." I shouldn't have laughed. "You're right. My father's words were cruel. You don't deserve that." I was scared of him, scared of what he'd say if I defended you. I froze. Her confession hung between us. I placed a hand over my heart, feeling its rapid thump. "You froze," I repeated. "You froze and chose silence." Silence that stung louder than any insult. She nodded, shoulders trembling. "I know. I wish I could take it back. I tried the second you walked out. I cried to my mom. I begged her to find you and tell you how much I love you." Her voice cracked, and she swallowed hard. But she wouldn't help. I shifted, the wood of the doorframe digging into my back. "Your mother." I echoed. "She sided with him?" Isla bit her lip. She said he was too proud to admit fault, that I needed to find the right moment, that it would pass. Her hand tightened around the daisies, petals crumpling. I waited. I thought if I waited long enough, you'd come back. If I could fix it myself, without pushing him too hard. Without pushing him, I finished, astonished at the logic. "You mean without risking his approval?" Her eyes burned with regret. "I never thought he'd hurt you like that. I believed I could contain him." I closed my eyes. I remembered her gentle laughter on other occasions, moments when she bent to kiss my forehead, when she traced the outlines of my dreams on napkins at pizza joints. I remembered believing in her, in us. But now I felt that world crack into splinters. Is that all I was? Something to contain, to manage, to negotiate. My voice shook despite my efforts to keep it steady. She shook her head vigorously. "No, you were always more than that." She took a shaky step forward. "You're everything I ever wanted." But in that moment, I was someone else, someone afraid of losing my family. I stared at her, weighing her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to reach out and pull her in, to tell her I still loved her. Another part of me recoiled, sure that this was the moment she'd ask me to forgive and forget, to promise I'd dance to her father's tune forever. She swallowed and exhaled, steeling herself. Julian, I came here to say that I'm done negotiating. I won't put you through that again. If you want me, it'll be on my terms. I'm choosing you. Her declaration hung in the morning air, fragile as dew. I wanted to lean in and brush her hair behind her ear. I wanted to tell her this was exactly the moment I'd been waiting for, proof that she valued me enough to risk it all. Instead, I felt the weight of every moment since that dinner settle in my chest. I appreciate that, I said slowly, but I need time. I need to know you'll stand up for me, even when I can't. She paused, uncertainty flickering across her face. I will, she whispered. I stepped back, closing the door until it clicked. The daisies drooped against the wood. I could hear her footsteps retreat, a soft shuffle that carried more sorrow than I could bear. I rested my hand on the door for a moment, listening to her voice trail off down the hall like an echo I couldn't catch. Inside my apartment, the morning light felt cold and empty. I walked to the window and watched her disappear around the corner, the daisy's petals fading from view as though she'd never held them. My reflection shimmered on the glass. A man torn between love and self-respect, between the comfort of what once was and the uncertainty of what could be. I returned to the kitchen counter, where my coffee had gone cold hours ago. I picked up the cup and drained the last bitter drop. The taste lingered, reminding me that healing wasn't a choice. It was a process, slow, gradual, and undeniably my own. As the day wore on, I felt the momentum shift. My heart ached, but beneath the ache was a flicker of something new, agency. I wasn't merely reacting. I was choosing. I could let her back in, but on different terms, terms that respected my dignity. Or I could walk away, leaving behind the fragments of a future that had been shattered by laughter. The answer wasn't yet clear, but for the first time, I felt the weight lift just enough to see both paths. I closed my eyes and focused on the hum of the city below, letting it remind me that life moved forward, whether I followed or not. And in that sound, I heard the promise of possibilities waiting just beyond the door. 3 days after the conversation at my door, and 2 days after I'd sent those memories boxes off to storage, I settled into my home office's ergonomic chair, the afternoon sun slanting across my desk. I'd been easing back into routine. Emails, client calls, strategy sessions framed by whiteboards scribbled with timelines and key performance indicators. Work felt safe, predictable, until my phone buzzed with a message that made my heart freeze. It was from Martina Elwell, the CEO of Vantage Technologies. I tapped open the notification and read, "Can we talk? Urgent." A knot tightened in my stomach as I clicked to call. The line rang twice before her voice, usually bright with enthusiasm, sounded low and measured. "Julian," she began, hesitating. "I just got off the phone with a Mr. Draper from Mercer and Company. He said he's reviewing my records to verify your personal financials, specifically your investment history and liquidity." Her tone was flat, as though delivering news of a mild plumbing emergency rather than an assault on my reputation. "What?" I forced surprise into my voice, though I'd known this was coming. My mind flashed back to Roland's predatory smirk at that dinner table, the way he'd tested my confidence in front of his daughter's fiancé. "He actually called you?" "Twice," Martina confirmed, exhaling with irritation. "He claimed it's standard due diligence before I hire any consultant with access to our funding rounds. But something felt off. He wanted bank statements, copies of my proof of funds letters, even my personal credit score report." I pressed my fingertips to my temples, feeling blood pulse there. Roland Mercer's firm, the very institution that spat me out as a joke, was weaponizing corporate protocols to undermine me. "Thank you for telling me," I said, standing to pace the length of the room. My suit jacket hung neatly on a hook. I hadn't bothered to put it back on. I ran a hand through my hair and tried to steady my voice. "I agree," she replied, her quiet confidence a bomb. "But I need you to walk me through this. Help me articulate to my board why these checks are unnecessary and why I trust you." I swallowed the urge to unload my frustration, to rail against Roland's duplicity. Instead, I nodded to myself, imagining she could see the gesture through the phone. "I'll send you a succinct statement outlining my credentials and the reason these inquiries are irrelevant. And I'll forward any relevant documentation preemptively, bank statements, proof of funds, the whole portfolio summary. That should cut off their leverage. Thank you, Martina said. I appreciate your help. I'll copy you on any further requests. She hung up, leaving me staring at the blank video call tile on my screen. A slow anger bubbled up, anger at Roland for orchestrating this, at Isla for sending me a token of love while her father moved in the shadows. It wasn't just an attempt to humiliate me socially. Now he aimed to strip away my professional standing. I opened a new document titled Statement of Financial Integrity and began typing. I outlined my consulting fees, bank references, audited financial statements, even a notarized letter from my accountant. I cross-referenced each figure, ensuring every I was dotted and every T crossed. This was more than damage control. It was armor, proof that I belonged in boardrooms, not just at dinner tables. By early evening, I'd sent the package to Martina, along with a brief note. I'm sorry you had to involve yourself in this, but I appreciate your willingness to stand by me. Let me know if there's anything else you need. Clicking send felt like firing a shot across Mercer and Company's bow. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders in waves. That night, I didn't call Isla. I felt too exhausted by the fight. Instead, I poured a glass of neat bourbon and settled on the balcony, the city skyline a patchwork of lights and darkened windows. The air carried a crisp breeze, rustling the leaves of a potted ficus I hadn't remembered to water recently. I sipped and stared out, tasting oak and smoke, thinking of the silence between us, the silence that cut deeper than her father's insults. The next morning, a letter arrived at my front door. The heavy envelope bore Isla's handwriting, elegant and precise. I paused before opening it, sensing a trap. When I finally broke the seal, inside were 5 photographs from our trip to Tuscany, vineyards at sunset, a bronze statue in a hilltop piazza, 2 smiling faces clinking glasses of Chianti. Beneath the photos was a sheet of stationery in her handwriting, a long paragraph apologizing, pleading, promising that we can still make it work if you'll only meet me halfway. She wrote about our shared dreams. A house by the lake, Sunday morning breakfasts, one day, maybe children of our own. I held the letter at arm's length and felt something odd. No fluttering of affection, no pang of regret. Just a flat, cold certainty that I was reading an echo of the past, not an invitation to the future. I traced the edge of one photo. Us under a cypress tree, golden light haloing our heads. The memory warmed my chest for a moment before dissolving like the sugar rim of that gelato I'd dribbled down my wrist. I laid the photos on the dining table and watched them lie there, beautiful, static fragments of a story I'd closed. I realized that while Roland had attacked my finances, Isla's silence during that battle had been the deeper betrayal. She had known he might attempt something. She had known how harmful it could be, and yet she had done nothing until her own comfort beckoned her back. Her words in the letter rang hollow compared to the weight of her father's actions. I gathered the photographs and stationery into an envelope and wrote a single line on the front, returned, no longer applicable. I didn't stamp it. I left it on my desk, a quiet monument to a chapter one refused to continue. That afternoon, I called Martina. Julian, she greeted me, concern-laced with gratitude. They've received your documents and dropped the request. They said it was a clerical error. Good, I said, relief and vindication mingling in my chest. Thank you for standing up to them. She paused. I'm glad I did. But more importantly, I'm glad you did too. As I hung up, I felt a shift, a definitive hinge in the narrative of my life. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about refusing to be silenced or diminished, whether by a wealthy father's whims or the love that wouldn't defend me. The threat in a suit had been neutralized, but the greater threat, my own willingness to stay, had already been vanquished. I poured another glass of bourbon and raised it to the setting sun, to independence, to self-respect, and to the next chapter, written by my own hand, free from the laughter that once ended everything. The morning I agreed to meet Marianne Mercer, I felt the weight of 1,000 unsaid questions pressing down on me. Her request had come in an email, so brief it felt almost brusque. Can we talk? I have something for you. I stared at her name on the screen longer than I cared to admit, then drafted a polite reply suggesting a downtown cafe at 11. When the time arrived, I walked into Ellington and Company on Maple Avenue, not the upscale venue where I'd once hoped to celebrate my engagement, but a modest bistro whose linen tablecloths and mismatched chairs hinted at genuine warmth. She was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table beneath a painting of wildflowers. Marianne looked different up close. Her hair, once perfectly coiffed, fell in loose waves around her shoulders. Faint lines framed her eyes, not of age, but of years spent holding in truth she dared not speak. She rose as I approached and offered me a tentative smile, extending a hand I clasped gently. Her touch was cool, her knuckles slender and pale. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice softer than I remembered. We sat, and a waiter promptly appeared with menus, but Marianne waved him away. "I'm not hungry," she said, turning her gaze to the window. I nodded and waited for her to continue. She took a deep breath, as though bracing herself. "I'm sorry for what Roland said," she began, her eyes unfocused. "I'm sorry for what Isla did." Her words stumbled against the table's center, vulnerable and raw. I hadn't expected an apology from her, only from that formidable fortress of a man I'd once called my future father-in-law. "It wasn't just my father," she said, folding her hands in front of her. "It was all of us. We didn't see you. We saw our daughter, our legacy, and whatever we thought you represented. And none of us paused to consider how cruel that was to you." I studied her face, trying to find the Marianne I'd once known, the gentle laugh in her eyes, the way she'd compliment my cooking on our first holiday dinner, the brief warmth in her gaze when she believed I was the right match for her daughter. But beneath those memories lay a cavern of betrayal, silences, dismissals, and one devastating evening. I inhaled slowly. "Thank you," I said. It was the only answer I could muster without shattering. Marianne reached into her handbag and withdrew a small, velvet-lined box. My heart picked up pace as she placed it between us. I hesitated before opening it, as though part of me feared another trap. But inside lay a silver ring set with a dark sapphire, its stone gleaming like a secret under the cafe's soft lights. "This was mine before I married into this family," she said, her fingers brushing the box's edge. "Your grandmother gave it to me on my 21st birthday. I wore it for years as a reminder of who I was before becoming Roland Mercer's wife." I lifted the ring, admiring its simple elegance, the smooth band, the deep blue stone that caught the light in shifting ripples. "It's beautiful," I murmured, feeling its weight in my palm. Marianne smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I kept it hidden these last 30 years, afraid of what my in-laws would say if they knew. But after what happened at Castellan, I realized someone needed to give it new life, someone who understood self-worth." She paused, and I noticed how her shoulders drooped as though she had carried a burden too long. "Why me?" I asked, surprised by the lump in my throat. "Because," she said, her voice steady, "you refused to bargain away your dignity. You left that dinner rather than endure someone else's definition of your worth. I've spent my life conforming an obedient daughter, a dutiful wife, an unseen mother. But you stood up for yourself." I felt a swell of emotion, gratitude, pain, hope, intertwined in a knot I couldn't untangle. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept it," she urged, leaning forward. "Not as a gift from me, but as a symbol of your own value. Let it remind you that you don't owe anyone your dignity." I slipped the ring onto my finger, surprised by how perfectly it fit. The sapphire's cool surface rested against my skin, a silent pledge that I could choose my own path. I looked up at Marianne, awed by the quiet courage in her eyes. "Thank you," I repeated, meaning every syllable. She exhaled, closing her eyes for a moment before opening them again with a clarity I had never seen in her. "You're welcome." "And Julian," she paused as though choosing her words carefully. "Know that you deserve someone who values you without hesitation." I nodded, tasting the truth of her statement. For too long, I'd sought approval. First from my own doubts, then from a family that thrived on privilege. Now, with this ring, I claimed a new kind of approval, my own. We lingered at the table, talking quietly about my consulting work, or art projects, the small tragedies and triumphs that had filled her life. For the first time, I saw her not as Isla's mother or Roland's wife, but as Marianne, a woman who had reclaimed a piece of herself. The cafe's bustle faded around us until all I felt was the steady presence of her sincerity. When I left, the ring glinted on my hand like a beacon. Outside, the sun warmed my face as I walked down Maple Avenue. I paused, raising my hand to feel the sapphire catch the light. I thought of everything I had lost and everything I stood to gain. The weight of that ring reminded me that dignity was not negotiable, and self-worth was not a privilege to be bestowed. It was a right to be claimed. As Marianne's silhouette receded behind the cafe window, I took a deep breath and stepped forward. For the first time in months, I felt anchored, not to a promise made at a table beset by laughter, but to an unshakable conviction in my own worth. And with that certainty, I knew my story would continue on my terms, ring on finger, head held high. I stared at the stacks of cardboard boxes lining the living room, each one labeled in my neat handwriting. Books, clothes, kitchen, memories. The condo felt cavernous now, its echo reminding me of every argument we'd ever had and every promise that had quietly unraveled. It had once been our sanctuary, but now each wall pressed in with the ghosts of conversations I no longer wanted to remember. I snapped the box closed and sealed it with tape, the rough strip catching on my fingertips as though reminding me of the cost of leaving. My hands trembled as I lifted the next box. Tuscany photos, our travel journals, the canvas print of the vineyard sunset we'd argued about hanging in the bedroom. I carried it to the foyer and stacked it neatly beside the front door. Each placement felt like a decision. This is where the past stays. Beyond this point lies a future I would build alone. The entire place smelled of cardboard and dust, like a library abandoned for too long. It felt good in a strange way, freeing, as though every packed item compressed the weight of old compromises. I paused in the hallway, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic below. My phone buzzed, a notification from Martina confirming her board meeting adjourned early after resolving that financial smear. I smiled at the small victory, then tucked the phone into my pocket and turned back to the boxes. There was no room for hesitation now. I moved methodically, pulling books from the shelves, sorting clothes in the closet, reclaiming the kitchen knives wrapped in bubble wrap. When I reached the bedroom, I found our bed stripped to the mattress, the headboard bare of the photographs we'd pinned there. I closed the curtains and gathered the sheets and pillows, bundling them into a sheet cover. The silk quilt we'd argued over, the one she said didn't match, went into the final box labeled linens. I took one last glance at the empty room and felt the hollow ache of loss, but also the thrill of opportunity. The buzzer rang. I hesitated, momentarily unsettled by the idea that someone might see me dismantling my life. Then I pressed the intercom. "It's me," I said. Theo's voice crackled through. "Need a hand?" I buzzed him in. A few minutes later, he appeared in the foyer, grinned tentative and sympathetic. His presence was a tether to better days, a reminder that I hadn't done this alone. We hoisted boxes together, stacking them in his car with military precision. He cracked jokes to ease my tension. "Hey, don't label all your regrets miscellaneous," he teased, making me laugh despite myself. Even laughter felt unfamiliar now, but good. With each box loaded, the condo looked emptier, my reflection in the window growing smaller as the sun slipped lower in the sky. When the last box was secured in the trunk, I closed the door behind me and inhaled the thinner, freer air. Theo slung an arm around my shoulders. "You okay, man?" he asked. I brushed his hand away, smiling ruefully. "I will be." His nod was patient, understanding more than words could convey. I returned inside for a final sweep. The bare floors felt chilly under my shoes, the echoes louder than before. I walked through each room, touching the wall where our wedding photos had hung, stepping onto the floor we danced across on quiet Saturday mornings. I whispered a quiet farewell. To the life I once imagined, to the person I was when I thought that ring meant forever. At the front door, I paused and looked back one last time. The empty rooms held no threat now, only potential. I believed that once I ceased carrying these boxes of memory, I would feel lighter, ready to fill new spaces with different stories. I locked the door and slid the key under the mat, a gesture of finality and release. Theo was waiting by his car, engine idling, headlights off. I joined him in the passenger seat, the boxes of memories taking up most of the back. As we drove away, the condo vanished behind a curve, and I felt a profound quiet settle in my chest. It was the hush after closure, the pause before a new beginning. That night, I unpacked only one box in my temporary apartment, the one Marianne had given me. I set the silver sapphire ring on the nightstand, its dark stone catching the lamplight. I didn't need photographs or journals right now. I needed that reminder. That dignity is something you carry with you, not something you leave behind. I lay on the mattress of an unfamiliar bedroom, listening to the hum of the city through the open window. The boxes, tucked away in storage, had condensed my past into neat containers. In their place, I felt the space to breathe, to choose, to become someone not defined by others' laughter or approval. And as sleep claimed me at last, I realized that sometimes the most honest packings are not of belongings, but of truths, untold, unbroken, finally unbound. A week after Marianne's gift, I sat at my desk going through client proposals when an alert popped up on my laptop, a credit report inquiry I didn't recognize. The header read Mercer and CO in cold, capital letters. My stomach dropped. I clicked to view the details and saw multiple hard inquiries dated just 2 days ago, requests for my credit history, bank balances, even loan applications I'd never made. My pulse spiked. Roland had promised subtlety. This was outright sabotage. I closed my laptop, stood, and paced the length of my office. The sunlight streaming through the blinds felt too bright, too revealing. I needed proof. I dialed a mutual contact at First National Bank, a compliance officer I trusted. My voice was steady despite the tremor I felt inside. "Can you confirm whether Mercer and Company requested my statements?" I asked. There was a pause, then a polite sigh. "Yes, they did. We flagged it as unusual and denied the request pending your authorization." Relief and fury warred in my chest at once. They tried to slip under the radar, but banking regulations had caught them. I thanked my contact and hung up, marveling at the double edge of bureaucracy. It restrained me in my proposals, but also protected me from predatory tactics. That evening, I confronted Isla over coffee at Blackwell's. Her eyes widened when I slid my phone across the table, showing the inquiries. She glanced at the screen, then back at me, cheeks paling. "Julian, I swear I didn't know." Her voice trembled like a candle flame. I folded my arms, leaned forward, and stared into her eyes. "You didn't know? Or you chose not to tell me?" My heart pounded. I needed honesty, not more excuses. She looked away, swallowing hard. I asked Dad for help fixing things after that dinner. He said he'd handle it professionally. I didn't ask for details. Her words felt me like a punch. I closed my eyes, recalling the night at Castellan, the way her laughter had sliced through me. Now I realized her father never stopped cutting. She'd enlisted him again, thinking he could erase pain with corporate maneuvers. The coffee between us cooled. I drank it in a single swallow and set the cup down hard. "You involved him again," I said. "You weaponized my name." My voice was low, controlled, but each word hammered the table. She reached across, but I pulled back. "I'm done being collateral damage." Her hand hovered over mine, trembling. "Please, Julian." "I'm trying." I shook my head. "Trying isn't enough. Not when you let him test me like this." Her lips quivered. "I love you." She whispered it, but the words felt empty beneath the din of Mercer and Company's inquiries. I stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. She gasped. "I have work to do," I said, the lie slipping out. I needed time to think, time to rebuild without betrayals lurking in the background. I walked away, leaving her alone under the soft glow of the cafe lights. That night, I called my accountant and scheduled a full audit of my personal and business accounts. I hired a credit monitoring service, activated fraud alerts, and changed several passwords. Each protective measure felt affirming, a brick in the wall I was erecting around my life. As I clicked through security settings, I realized how often I had trusted others, trusted love, family, social niceties, to safeguard me. Now, I was the only guardian of my own integrity. In the days that followed, I buried myself in work, throwing myself into client deliverables with a fierce focus. I rebounded data analysis late into the night, drafted marketing plans at dawn, and negotiated contracts with newfound confidence. My phone no longer buzzed with pleas from Isla or her family. The silence was disconcerting at first, but gradually it felt like breathing room. One afternoon, I received an email from Mercer and Company. Their clerical error notice was brief. They regretted any inconvenience and confirmed no further requests would be made. I read the lines twice, then closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. The battle over my finances. I looked out the window at the cityscape, sunlight catching the glass facades of high-rises. I thought of all the times I'd compromised, tried to fit into molds not meant for me. The credit inquiries had been an affront, but they had also forced me to reclaim ownership of my story. I sipped my water and smiled, a slow, genuine curve. My name was on my credit report and on my terms. I was more than Mercer's weapon or Isla's project. I was Julian Mercer, no, Julian Morris, standing firm in my own worth. 2 months had passed, and in that time, I'd settled into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. My mornings began with coffee on the balcony, laptop open to project timelines and client updates. I'd taken to journaling again, filling pages with aspirations rather than anxieties. I'd even started attending a weekend pottery class, surprised at how soothing it was to knead clay into simple bowls, small creations I could hold, free from expectation. Life had regained its shape, defined by my choices rather than someone else's design. Then my phone buzzed, interrupting a Zoom call with Martina. I silenced the meeting, excusing myself to take the call privately. The display showed Isla's name. My chest tightened, a reflexive churn of anticipation and wariness. 2 months ago, I might have answered with hope. Now I answered with guarded calm. Hello. No sobs this time. No frantic apologies. Just soft breathing on the other end, measured and steady. Julian, she said. Her voice carried a confidence I hadn't heard before. No pleading tremor, no shaky preamble. I need to tell you something. I closed my eyes and leaned against the wall, bracing myself. Go ahead. She inhaled. I've been seeing someone from the foundation, Matthew. He's working on the children's literacy project Dad sponsors. He's kind. He sees me. And maybe I was looking for someone to make me feel worthy without tests or jokes. Her tone was gentle, reflective, not designed to elicit pity. I wanted you to hear it from me. I pictured her office at the foundation, rows of filing cabinets and narrow desks where papers spilled over. I pictured Matthew, someone careful and considerate, someone she'd chosen. A wave of relief washed through me, followed by a quiet pride. She'd moved forward. She'd found support elsewhere. I'm glad you found someone who values you, I said, surprised at how easily the words came. You deserve that. She paused. For a moment, I feared she might apologize again, but she didn't. Instead, she continued, I called because I wanted to thank you. The words were so unexpected that I blinked. Thank you for walking away. I see now that you showed me what it means to honor yourself. I needed that lesson. I closed my eyes and let her gratitude sink in. It felt strange to be thanked for a departure that had felt so final. You're welcome, I said softly. I'm glad it helped. She chuckled, a low, warm sound. It did. And I hope you're happy. I glanced out the window at the dusty rose sky of early evening. I am, I replied. I had a home that felt like mine, a job I loved, friendships restored, and a ring from Marian that reminded me daily of my worth. I really am. Silence stretched across the line, comfortable now, like two old friends sharing a moment of quiet understanding. Finally, she spoke. I hope one day you find someone who sees your worth without a ledger. A smile tugged at my lips. I already have, I said, surprising both of us. I see it now. My heart hummed, steady and strong. I've learned to value myself first. Her breath caught. I'm proud of you, Julian. I felt a warmth expand through my chest that had nothing to do with nostalgia. Thank you, Isla. Goodbye. Goodbye, she echoed, softer this time. I ended the call and placed the phone on the table beside me. I let out a slow breath and closed my eyes, tasting the quiet triumph in the air. 2 months ago, her calm confidence would have been enough to upend me. Now, it felt like a benediction on a chapter already closed. I picked up my journal and wrote a single line. Closure is its own kind of gift. Then I turned the page and began sketching the outline of a new bowl I planned to shape in clay, a vessel meant to hold fresh water, not stale memories. That night, as dusk settled over the city, I stood on my balcony watching the lights awaken across the skyline. I slipped the silver sapphire ring, Marianne's gift, into my palm and traced its smooth band. It reminded me that the strongest bonds are the ones you forge with yourself, unbreakable because they spring from the truth of who you are. And in that gentle affirmation, I felt a softness bloom in my heart, a quiet celebration of endings that free you and beginnings born from resolve. The final conversation wasn't a farewell so much as a beginning, a promise that self-respect, once claimed, can lead you anywhere you choose. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, unassuming and plain, resting on the welcome mat like any other piece of mail. I carried it inside, expecting a bill or a solicitation, but when I turned it over and saw Marianne's elegant script, my chest tightened. I hadn't spoken to her since that morning at the cafe where she awarded me the silver ring, and in the weeks since, her presence had become a quiet beacon in my life. I sliced the envelope open and unfolded a sheet of tissue-wrapped canvas. Beneath the soft paper lay a small painting of a weathered dock stretching into a pale, rippling lake at sunset, colors of molten gold melting into lavender sky, reeds swaying in a gentle breeze, and a single wooden rowboat tied loosely to a post. I lifted the painting and held it against the wall opposite my desk, just high enough that the fading light of dusk would catch the water's surface. The scene felt familiar and foreign at once, not Tuscany vineyards or candlelit dinners, but something quieter, steadier, and infinitely more hopeful. I ran my fingers over the brushstrokes, imagining Marianne's hand guiding the paint, perhaps recalling evenings she once spent dreaming of her own future before it was shaped by someone else's design. In that moment, I realized she'd sent me more than a gift. She'd sent me a reminder of possibility, of calm conviction. Later that evening, I found myself lingering in the living room, the painting glowing softly under the lamp's warm beam. The bottles of bourbon and glasses on the coffee table seemed louder, the edges of the room sharper, but the dock drifted before my eyes like a promise of stillness. I poured myself a measure and settled into the armchair facing the canvas, glass in hand. It was strange how a single image could carry so much weight, a silent manifesto that spoke of departure and return, of courage and trust in one's own bearings. I realized, too, that this revolution, my departure from a life that nearly broke me, was not an eruption of anger but a quiet shift, like water finding a new course. That night, sleep came easily, and I dreamed of standing at the edge of that dock, toes grazing the cool wood, the surface of the lake reflecting an endless sky. I felt neither fear nor loss, only readiness to step forward, as though balance had been restored. In the morning, I made coffee and stood before the painting again, imagining I could smell the lake's mist and hear distant loons calling across the water. I fetched an empty frame from the spare closet and fitted the canvas inside, then carried it to the wall above my kitchen table, a place where meals would be shared, ideas hashed out, phone calls with friends and clients made. Over the next few days, the painting became part of my routine. When work emails piled up or a difficult client negotiation left me frazzled, I'd glance away from the screen and find solace in the dock's quiet invitation. On weekends, I took the painting down and carried it to my pottery class, sketching the scene on a slab of clay before molding its form into a shallow bowl. My hands remembered the gentle sway of the reeds as they shaped the rim, and I thought of Marianne's words, "You don't owe anyone your dignity." Each coil of clay felt like an extension of that dock, a vessel built to hold only what I chose to put inside. One afternoon, the painting caught the light in a way that turned the lavender sky into deep violet. My sister called then, her voice bright and curious. "What's new with you?" she asked. I told her about the painting, about the pottery, about the feeling of waking each day unburdened. She laughed. Her laugh warm and genuine, as though she'd been waiting to hear that I'd found peace. I described how I'd hung the canvas above the kitchen table, how every meal now felt infused with purpose, how I'd started planning a weekend getaway to a lakeside cabin. "It's like you're rediscovering yourself," she said. I smiled, looking toward the painting, recognizing in that simple act of hanging a mirror for my soul. "I am," I said, "and it's exactly the reminder I needed." That evening, I invited Theo over for dinner. I cooked pasta with fresh tomatoes, garlic, and basil, the kind of meal that filled the house with laughter and stories instead of tension. As we ate, the painting watched over us, its muted colors a steady presence. Theo raised his glass. To self-respect, he toasted, and I clinked my glass against his, feeling the echoes of my journey settle into steadier rhythms. Later, alone again in the soft lamplight, I traced the dock's edge with my gaze. What Marianne had given me was more than a painting. It was a living emblem of the quiet revolution I'd waged within myself. No grand proclamations, no dramatic battles, just the courage to step away, the grace to reclaim my worth, and the wisdom to hang a reminder in my home that sometimes the most profound transformations come in hushed strokes of color on canvas. And as I turned off the lights and the room softened into shadow, I knew I carried that dock within me, ready for any sunrise. 6 months had passed since I last walked away from the condo that had held promises I no longer believed in. In that time, I'd found a modest house on the edge of town, a fixer-upper with peeling paint and sagging floors, but with a view of the woods that felt like possibility. I'd spent weekends scraping wallpaper and repainting walls, measuring out tile for the kitchen backsplash, and coaxing life back into a garden that had languished under neglect. Everything I touched bore my fingerprints and my intention, from the freshly stained deck to the new light fixture in the hallway. Each improvement felt like a declaration. This house was mine, built on my terms. On a crisp autumn morning, I stepped onto that deck with a mug of black coffee in hand, the steam mingling with the cool air as I gazed at the golden light filtering through the treetops. I slipped the silver sapphire ring over my head and onto my finger, feeling the cool weight of the stones settle into place. Marianne's gift lay against my chest now, hidden beneath my shirt but never far from my thoughts. It reminded me that dignity wasn't something granted by others but claimed by myself. I ran a thumb over the dark stone and thought of all that had led me here, the laughter that ruptured my engagement, the financial attacks, the silences and apologies, and the small revolutions that had redefined my worth. Pulling my coat tighter around me, I imagined the day I'd leave this house to someone else, if that ever happened, and wondered if they'd feel the echo of my determination in the walls. But for now, it belonged to me, and I intended to live into that ownership fully. I stepped back inside, the wooden plank floor groaning beneath my boots, and made my way to the window overlooking the living room. There, above the mantel, I'd placed Marianne's painting of the dock at sunset, a testament to quiet resilience. Beneath it sat a flask of bourbon, a stack of books on business strategy and personal growth, and a small potted fern I'd named Grace. The room felt both lived in and hopeful, balanced between function and comfort. That afternoon, I found myself downtown running errands for the renovation, picking up oak planks for the new staircase railing, choosing weather-resistant exterior stain, and selecting a muted green for the front door. At each stop, shopkeepers greeted me by name, asking how the project was coming along. I felt the pleasure of community support, a contrast to the evening at Castellan where I'd felt so acutely alone. As I loaded the last of the supplies into my truck, my phone buzzed with a message, "Housewarming next month?" From Martina. I smiled, typing back, "Count me in." Moments later, a text from Theo, "Bring that bourbon." I grinned at the perfect coordination of friends and celebrated independence. Back at the house, I emptied the truck into the garage and carried boxes of tools inside. I paused at the threshold of the master bedroom, now painted a pale charcoal that caught the light in subtle whispers. I'd laid down new hardwood floors here last week, their surfaces gleaming under the ceiling fan's display of movement. I walked to the center of the room and turned in slow circles, imagining a bed where only one person slept, a desk where I'd write future proposals and stories, and a corner where I'd set up a small record player to fill the space with music I chose. I inhaled the scent of fresh paint and pine, feeling grounded in the reality of my own creation. In the evening, I sat at the dining table, an old farmhouse piece I'd refinished myself, with blueprints spread before me. The table's turned legs and rustic surface complemented the sapphire ring, its blue depth a steady point of focus as I sketched out the layout for built-in bookshelves. With each pencil stroke, I felt the convergence of vision and action. This was no longer merely about moving on. It was about constructing a life that reflected every lesson I'd earned: self-respect, resilience, and authenticity. Later, when the house was quiet, I settled into the armchair in the living room, the dock painting glowing softly in the lamp's light. I uncapped my bourbon flask and poured a measure into a glass, the amber liquid sloshing gently as I turned it in my hand. I let the warmth spread through me as I took a slow sip, savoring the burn and the comfort of solitude well-earned. I closed my eyes and heard the echo of the waves on that painted dock, a sound that no longer frightened me but invited reflection. Across the room, an unopened letter lay on the coffee table, its envelope bearing Isla's handwriting. I glanced at it and felt no compulsion to open it. I recognized it for what it was, another attempt to re-enter a story I had already rewritten. I rose and retrieved the envelope, then placed it in the recycling bin by the fireplace. There it would belong, among the cast-offs of a past version of myself. On the mantel, next to the painting, I had placed a new object. An antique compass I'd found at a roadside flea market. Its brass casing was scratched, its glass face slightly cloudy, but the needle still quivered northward with unwavering certainty. I had thought it simply a symbol of direction, but now I saw it as a testament to staying true to oneself. I picked it up and held it against Marianne's painting, aligning the compass's arrow with the dock's perspective, as though both pointed toward the same horizon of self-determination. That night, sleep found me easily in the renovated master bedroom. I fell into dreams without the rush of panic or doubt, instead spinning stories of distant travels and new beginnings. I remembered how lost I once felt, adrift in a sea of expectations, tethered by others' definitions of value. Now, I felt anchored in my own identity, guided by the ring's sapphire glow and the compass's unwavering needle. When morning arrived, light filtered through the new curtains I'd installed, dust motes dancing in the beams. I remembered a conversation with Martina about fear of complacency. "Don't mistake comfort for stagnation," she'd said. "Growth happens when you know who you are and still choose to become more." I took a deep breath and stood, ringing the crystal tumbler on the nightstand to awaken my senses. I slipped the compass into my jacket pocket and the ring settled on my finger like a promise. I walked downstairs to the kitchen, where Grace the fern thrived on the windowsill, and poured a fresh cup of coffee. I thought of the housewarming party next month, of friends filling this space with laughter and conversation, each person a testament to the life I'd cultivated. I thought of Marianne's kindness, of Theo's steadfast loyalty, of Martina's partnership, and of the person I'd become, a man who understood that the greatest value one could hold was not inheritance or lineage, but the integrity of one's own heart. Raising the mug to my lips, I whispered to the empty room, "Here's to self-worth," unapologetically claimed. And in that moment, bathed in morning light and quiet resolve, I realized I had indeed found someone who saw my worth without a ledger, myself.